Here are 5 reasons to start a podcast as soon as you can. Number 1, you don't have to be on camera. Number 2, you can reach a massive audience. Number 3, podcasts are absolutely great at building trust with your audience. Number 4, podcasts are probably the easiest content to repurpose. And I'll explain why in just a minute in this video. And number 5, if you do it right, your podcast can drive sales for your entire online business. If all of that sounds too good to be true, then don't forget that creating and running a podcast still requires work. I've already talked about podcasting in the past. For example, in this video here with Nick Nalbach, who is a podcast coach. And also after this interview, I created my very own podcast with just a smartphone in this video here. And while podcasting has huge advantages, it also has one big problem holding back most new podcasters. And that is discoverability. In other words, if you don't promote your podcast, nobody will listen to it. Podcasting isn't like YouTube videos or social media content where the platforms push great content and you can get viewers organically. Podcasts usually get discovered by their rankings, but you already need to have listeners to appear on the rankings, which is why new or small podcasts struggle to get discovered and grow their audience. So I've just given you these 5 amazing reasons why you should start a podcast, and then I went on to explain why nobody's gonna listen to your podcast. But here's the thing, I think that these 5 amazing reasons also solve the biggest problem of discoverability, and I'm going to show that to you right now. Let's start with reason number 1, no camera. I've helped a ton of people create videos, and being on camera is almost always a problem. Well, maybe not so much for you. Do you like being on camera or not? Let me know in the comments below if you love the camera and the camera loves you. But with podcasting, you can just talk into the microphone and it doesn't matter what you look like today. That makes it easier to create content and helps tremendously with staying consistent. In this video series, I've covered all the best content strategies. One strategy isn't better than the other, but no matter which strategy you pick, consistency is the decisive factor for content marketing. Picking the content strategy where you can be consistent is going to be the best strategy for you. And if you want your podcast to grow, then you're gonna have to be consistent pretty much without exception. And because you don't need a camera for your podcast, it might help you in being more consistent. Reason number 2 is massive reach. While it's true that podcasts have kind of bad discoverability, podcasts do have a massive reach. As you can see in Statista's study here, podcast listeners have almost doubled over the last 5 years, and by 2024, this number is estimated to reach 504.9 million listeners. Once you start promoting your podcast, there is a massive audience waiting to tune in, and that audience only keeps growing year after year, currently without any signs of slowing down. Reason number 3 is trust. As a coach or a consultant, we don't get paid for views and likes on social media. We only make money by collecting leads and making sales. But before somebody signs up with a coach or a consultant and before they buy from them, they have to trust their coach or consultant first. When somebody listens to your podcast, you are building a relationship with them. And on average, podcasters enjoy a higher level of trust with their audience compared to social media. So even if you only have a handful of listeners, use that relationship with them and ask them to share your podcast episode. Make it a top priority to ask them for help and turn it into a community effort. During that early phase, you don't have to sell anything, you don't even have to promote anything. Just make it your mission to grow your podcast together with your current listeners. And that brings us to reason number 4, which is repurposing. I've already mentioned in the beginning that I think podcasts are the easiest content to repurpose. I find it much easier to turn a podcast episode into a video than the other way around. If you just strip the audio from your videos and load that into to your podcast, your listeners will feel that you're not speaking directly to them. This breaks the immersion and it breaks the trust. However, you can take the audio from your podcast episode and add something like whiteboard animations, show photos, show B-roll footage, or even record yourself while you're talking. And that means that each podcast episode can be quite easily turned into a long-form video. So you can promote your podcast on YouTube and Facebook Watch. After that, you can even take snippets from that video and post them on social media like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You can also use many of the free tools to get a transcript of each of your podcast episodes and then turn that transcript into a blog post. These blog posts can potentially rank on the search engines and also help you promote your podcast. And finally, you can take really short sections of that blog post and then share them on Twitter, for example. If you do all of these steps consistently, you can get more and more listeners one week after the other, especially when your podcast link is easily found on all your social media profiles. The fifth and final reason is monetization. If you're selling your knowledge and your expertise, then the best way to monetize your podcast is to generate leads and drive sales for your coaching or consulting business. If signing up clients is a roadblock for you at the moment, then grab my free report called How to Get Your First Client Online. The link is CreateGrowProfit.com/first client PDF, and I'll also put the link in the description below this video. But once you start making money with your podcast, you can reinvest some of the profits into paid advertising and promotions. This will further accelerate the growth, of course, and make your podcast much more discoverable. Currently, the #1 podcast in the world is the Joe Rogan Experience. You've probably already heard about it. Another great example is the podcast called The Diary of a CEO. It is hosted by the British entrepreneur and TV persona called Stephen Bartlett. Study successful examples like these two shows and particularly pay attention to how they promoted their podcast before they got so big. That brings us to the final video in this content marketing series. First video was an overview of the best content marketing strategies. Then each video covered each strategy in detail. And the next and final video is going to be about how to stay consistent in your content marketing. Click here to watch that video next. My name is Morris and thank you for watching.